Hello everybody. We are excited to share with you the newly adopted Tennessee 4-H Citizenship Project outcomes. Citizenship is one of the 27 project areas within the Tennessee 4-H Youth Development Program. Within this project, 4-Hers work to improve their communities, countries, and world through service. This presentation will serve as an introduction and a brief overview of the project outcomes that were adopted in January of 2017, as well as give you information about what the ultimate goal of the outcomes are and how they're structured and organized. These outcomes were developed through a collaborative effort of several subject matter specialists within the Tennessee 4-H Youth Development Program, and their names and contact information will be listed at the conclusion of this presentation. Before we can dive into explaining the new citizenship outcomes, it's probably important to define what an outcome is and why we have chosen to define outcomes for our project areas. In order to be truly effective in educating our youth, we need to be able to define what it is we want them to learn. Several curriculum development models, such as the ones developed by Ralph Tyler and Hilda Taba, place an emphasis on defining learning outcomes before identifying curricular materials and assessments. This is where our outcomes come into play. Our subject matter specialists have identified the topics and subject areas they feel are important to 4-H members in this project. These categories then guided the writing of outcomes and indicators for the project area. An outcome is the big item that our 4-H members should be learning, and an indicator is a smaller piece of that bigger item that 4-H members should master through involvement in the program. These outcomes will then be used to guide the development of 4-H Citizenship Project curriculum. The curriculum will be written to help provide students with the knowledge necessary to meet all of the outcomes that have been defined for the project. These outcomes will also give our 4-H members goals to work towards in their project work and can be helpful when working on a project portfolio. Our outcomes for citizenship are organized in three separate ways. The first level of organization is based on the 4-H members' involvement in the project. This is a change from how project areas used to be organized, which was on a grade level basis. Beginner outcomes are aimed for students who have completed their first or second year in the project. Intermediate is targeted for 3 to 5 years in the project, and advanced for 4-H members who have 6 or more years in the project area. To clear up any confusion, say that Billy Joe switches from the beef project, which he has been involved in since the 4th grade, into citizenship when he is in the 9th grade. Billy Joe will need to go back to the beginning level citizenship outcomes and curriculum and work through those before moving on to the intermediate and advanced. However, Billy Joe will more than likely move through the beginner and intermediate curriculum much faster than someone just starting out in the project in 4th grade. But he will still need to gain those basic background knowledge and skills covered in the beginning and intermediate outcomes. The second way that our project outcomes are organized is based on what the student is gaining from that outcome. The outcomes are ultimately written to increase the student's knowledge, which is what we want them to know, their skills, which is what we want them to be able to complete, and their dispositions, which are what feelings or mindsets the students should adopt through project work. These outcomes are also written to move students from lower order thinking skills to higher order thinking skills. This is accomplished by writing outcomes that help move students through the different levels of Bloom's taxonomy. For citizenship, the majority of the beginner outcomes are written for the remember and understand levels of Bloom's. Intermediate outcomes are written for the apply and analyze levels, and advanced outcomes are written for evaluate and create levels of Bloom's taxonomy. The final level of organization for the outcomes is based on the social change model. Each of the indicators in the project falls under one of the 3 pillars of this model: learn, transform, or activate. While the connection is not explicitly stated on the outcome, it will be included in the project curriculum for the students to draw the connections to as they complete their project work. The remainder of this presentation will walk through each of the outcomes and indicators and offer a brief explanation for each. You'll notice in the downloadable version of the outcomes included on the projects page that this particular project is organized by knowledge, skills, and dispositions. For the purposes of this presentation, we will go through each of the outcomes and indicators as they are written in the document. Starting with beginner knowledge, the first outcome is understand your strengths and weaknesses as an individual. This outcome focuses on having the 4-H members identify their strengths and weaknesses as they are related to leadership, speaking, working with others, and other interpersonal skills. The second outcome is develop an understanding of service inside and outside your local community. In this section of the project, 4-H members will research different civic organizations, both on the state, local, and international levels. Students will also work to develop a definition of what being a global citizen means to them. Moving into the skills section of the beginner outcomes, we have demonstrate an understanding of civic engagement, volunteerism, and service learning. These 3 items encompass the major areas of service as related to citizenship. With this outcome, 4-H members will establish a definition for the terms, compare and contrast these types of service, and then identify the steps of a service learning model, one of the most common service models used in the 4-H program. Wrapping up the beginner level outcomes, we have 2 outcomes related to the dispositions that our students should gain. The first, value your heritage and how it defines you as an individual, places a focus on genealogy and how that relates to a 4-H member's ancestry and their family tree. The second outcome places a focus on community. Value the importance of being a citizen in your local community. This allows 4-H members to start having a direct connection to their community. This outcome will help the students establish a definition of their local community, identify their elected officials, and find ways they can become involved in their community. After 4-H members have been enrolled in the project for 2 years, they should have completed each of the outcomes listed in this section and will be ready to move on to the intermediate level outcomes. The intermediate knowledge section is comprised of 3 separate outcomes. The first, understand the U.S. Citizenship Project, allows our members to research and learn the steps an immigrant must take to become a U.S. citizen. The second outcome, examine the U.S. political system, allows our members to take an unbiased look at politics in the United States. Students will research the executive, legislative, and judicial branches of government and see how they work together and how they are different, while also looking at the major political parties of the United States and seeing how they are alike and different. The final outcome, discover information regarding your heritage, allows our members to gain a deeper understanding of their family by learning family stories and expanding their family tree they started in the beginning level of project work. The skills section of the intermediate level of outcomes is governed by 6 separate outcomes. The first allows students to expand on the definitions they established in the beginning level project work. Differentiate between civic engagement and volunteerism allows our members to talk with members of community organizations to further define each of these types of service. Survey the needs met by different community organizations allows our 4-H members to take a look at different community organizations to see what needs each of those organizations meets in the community, and allows the 4-H member to potentially establish partnerships with those organizations. The third outcome allows students to develop the skills of community mapping. Discover the needs of your community through community mapping allows 4-H members to collect results and analyze those to establish the needs of their community using the well-developed method of community mapping. Our fourth outcome allows students to put into practice what they have learned so far. Utilize different methods of service in your community encourages students to plan and perform service in their local community using each of the methods they researched at the beginning level. A special emphasis is placed on incorporating the service learning model where possible. Teach others the importance of community involvement helps encourage 4-H members to motivate others in their club and community to become more involved in service. Our last skill-focused outcome for the intermediate level focuses on the global connection. Analyze different global cultures allows our members to research and compare different cultures from around the world to each other and to their own. An emphasis is placed on creating global connections in your community with this outcome. The last 4 outcomes in the intermediate level are dispositions. The first, appreciate the different cultures present in your community, carries over the global connection we saw in the last skill outcome. This allows students to look at their community, to observe different activities that can be connected to other cultures. The 4-H members are encouraged to create connections with members of their community who have a different cultural background than they do, and they are also encouraged to take part in different cultural events in their community. 4-H members are also encouraged to understand the need for being an active community member as one of the intermediate outcomes. This allows the student to find ways to be engaged as a volunteer in their community. Value the importance of networking within your community. Our 4-H members are taught that having a large network is never a bad thing. This outcome gives students the ability to meet and talk with community members, develop partnerships, and share 4-H events and activities with members of their community. The final intermediate outcome for citizenship is understand and value the needs for members of other countries. This outcome encourages our members to research the struggles and hardships faced by individuals of other countries. At the intermediate level, 4-H members are encouraged to start keeping project records and to become involved in events outside their county. One great opportunity for members at this level is to apply for Junior High 4-H Academic Conference. This is a 4-day-long conference held at the University of Tennessee at Knoxville, where 4-H members work alongside subject matter specialists to gain knowledge about their project area. More information on academic conference can be found at 4h.tennessee.edu. Moving to the advanced level outcomes, we have one outcome related to knowledge. Assess and address community needs. This outcome allows 4-H members to construct community improvement plans, organize projects, and collaborate with other leaders in their community. Our first skill outcome for the advanced level says construct references related to politics within the United States. This allows students to use their higher order thinking skills to create displays and materials related to the knowledge they have gained about politics and government. Students continue to learn more about the political system in America and collect information on political candidates in an election. The second outcome, evaluate careers related to public service, allows students to draw a connection from their project work to possible careers within this field. Share with others the value of different cultures within a community encourages 4-H members to work with others to identify their community's culture and how that impacts community members. 4-H members are also encouraged to collaborate with others and plan a community culture night. Again, we have a focus placed on careers with our outcomes that say, evaluate careers related to culture and heritage, where students can explore careers related to this portion of their project work. Create long and short-term volunteer plans. Encourages 4-H members to work with their club members to develop plans for future service of the club. 4-H members will also create a service plan for themselves as a part of this outcome. 4-H members will work to create long-standing partnerships with organizations in their community to allow their club to work with these organizations in the future. Students will also identify organizations that they could be involved in after graduation and work with others to discuss the community improvement plan that was created. Students will work to appraise global service needs, where they can work as a club to develop a global service plan. The final skill outcome for the advanced level is to design service learning activities for groups, where 4-H members work to lead these groups through all steps of the service learning model and create resources that can be used to teach younger 4-H members about the service learning model. Moving to the advanced level dispositions, we have defined 3 outcomes. Realizing the importance of exercising one's right to vote places an emphasis on encouraging our 4-H members to register to vote and take part in local, state, and federal elections. Since many of our members will not be able to register to vote until our last year in the program, they are given the opportunity to encourage others to do so by holding a voter registration drive. Help others value the importance of collaboration in a community. This outcome gives 4-H members the opportunity to share with others in their club and community what they have learned about collaboration and the importance of networking. The final outcome, appreciate the value of being a global citizen, allows students to observe ways they can impact their global community by evaluating the global work they do now and then listing ways they can become more involved in the future. By the time students have reached the end of their 4-H career and that those students have been active in the Citizenship project, they should have completed all of the outcomes listed in this presentation. In the advanced level, students are encouraged to create a project portfolio and compete with that project portfolio on the state level. At the time of recording, competitions for state citizenship portfolio are held at State 4-H Congress in Nashville. By competing in the project portfolio competition at the level 2, students have the opportunity to earn a trip to National 4-H Congress. These outcomes were authored by James Swart, who serves as a graduate assistant for the Tennessee 4-H Youth Development Program. Alexis Hall assisted with identifying the areas of focus and organization of the outcomes. These outcomes were reviewed by agents in county 4-H programs across the state, members of the state 4-H staff in Knoxville, and the regional directors, family and consumer science, and agricultural and natural resource program leaders and regional 4-H specialists from each of the 3 extension regions in the state. Dr. Jennifer Richards, curriculum specialist, served as the final reviewer and approver of the outcomes prior to publication. Questions regarding the outcomes should be directed to James, who can be reached by email at jswart@tennessee.edu.